Of course, not all cultures are equally valid. I don't believe in cultural relativism. I believe in Western values.
Stating basic, obviously true things on TV will now get you labeled a racist, even if you're black. A black conservative's comments on the BBC go viral, another campus free speech controversy, and TikTok continues to antagonize men. All this and so much more is coming up on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across the internet and across our politics, all from an independent perspective. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and sticking around. And regardless, do hit that like button as we go along to reward my suffering through the depths of stupidity that is the internet. And do comment with your thoughts. I love hearing what you guys have to say. I do read the comments as much as I can, and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. Plus, if you leave your comment with a super chat or a super thanks, I'll definitely respond to it on the next show. And now, let's head over the pond and check in on our friends over in Britain, who seem to be even more ensconced in woke insanity than we are these days. A clip from the BBC featuring the Conservative Member of Parliament, Kemi Badenoch, is going viral right now because a journalist attempted to play gotcha and suggest that her extremely common sense statement was actually somehow racist. Let's watch her original clip, and then we'll break down the fallout from it, which has been truly unhinged as well.
Now, you've written this morning about immigration, and you write that we cannot assume that all cultures are equally valid. So which cultures, in your view, are less valid than others?
Oh, lots. Cultures that believe in child marriage, for instance, or that women don't have equal rights. I actually think it's extraordinary that people think that's an unusual or controversial thing to say. Of course, not all cultures are equally valid. I don't believe in cultural relativism. I believe in Western values, the principles which have made this country great. And I think that we need to make sure that we continue to abide by those principles to keep the society that we have now.
So which particular cultures then would you say are less valid? Because as you've said, your words, not mine, some people think that that is a controversial thing to say. So which cultures would you specifically say are less valid than others?
So it's not about labeling cultures. Culture includes a lot of things. I'm not talking about cuisine, I'm talking about customs. And I think that cultures where women are told that they should not work, I would knock on doors. I'm sure Penny and Jake had this. You'd knock on doors and you'd see somebody at the door who says, oh, I can't speak to you, I will get my husband. I don't think that's as equally valid as our culture. But the point I was making in the op-ed was about immigration. That immigration is something which we need to make sure we get right. We didn't before. And there were three things I said we needed to do. One, numbers matter. I was quite surprised that Rob actually misrepresented what I've been saying. Numbers do matter. Culture matters even more. Who comes into the country is absolutely critical. And leadership. You need to start from the top. It's no good simply saying we're going to lower immigration and outsource it. It has to come very much from the Prime Minister himself or herself.
Are you saying, though, that if somebody in their culture who lives here in the UK, who might be a British citizen, who answered the door to you and said, I won't speak to you, I'd like you to speak to my husband instead, are you saying, you have said their culture is less valid, are you saying that people with those beliefs shouldn't be welcome in the UK?
I am saying that if we want to have a well-integrated society, we need to make sure that we have a shared culture and a shared identity. This is a multi-ethnic society. That's obvious. I'm a black woman sitting here talking to you. But there is a difference between being multi-ethnic and being multicultural. I grew up in a place that was multicultural, and yet everybody looked the same. Conflict arises when you emphasize difference. We need to emphasize the thing that we share. Being British, British values, the things that we talked about, freedom, equal rights, personal responsibility, not discriminating people because of their sexual orientation. There are some cultures that do that. I don't think that a culture that thinks gay people should be stoned is as valid as ours. This is not a controversial thing to say.
So I agree. I don't see how this would be controversial in any real sense. But it has proven quite controversial, so much so that some people, at least, are now labeling this black conservative member of parliament as a racist for her remarks that I just played for you. One viral tweet declared this vile, gross, and despicable racism with no place in the UK. All cultures and all people have the same exact right to walk this earth. All cultures are valid as the next. Let's stand united. The Tories can keep their vile division. RT if you agree. And here's a clip of one woke white male commentator on the LBC critiquing the member of parliament and essentially saying she's racist and doesn't like brown people. Yes, seriously.
I'm not going to lie to you. If Kemi Badenoch knocked on my door, I'd say I was going to go and get my husband and I wasn't allowed to talk to her. I haven't even got a husband. Number one, how does she know that they are immigrants? I met a lovely bloke at a lunch and I sat next to him because he couldn't sit next to my wife because of his religious beliefs. Looking back, I don't know that I could do that again. It didn't really clock at the time. I didn't actually find out until afterwards that Mrs. O'Brien had been moved. And it was quite a highfalutin event. But the notion that you can't sit next to a woman because of your religious beliefs is something that I don't know. You could kind of respect up until the point that the woman is being disrespected. So is that what she means? It was a rabbi, by the way. Is that what she means? I genuinely don't know. And I'm not sure she does either. Because what I think both of these characters are doing when they talk about either English identity or a sort of hierarchy of cultures, I think they're just saying there's too many brown people here, aren't they? I mean, is there ever any more to it? Does it run any deeper than a dog whistle? I'm pretty sure Kemi Badenoch is not talking about Orthodox Jews, for example. I'm pretty sure she's talking about Muslims. What do you hear when you hear a politician like Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch talk about English identity or some cultures being superior to others?
So this whole story is absolutely wild to me because what Kemi Badenoch actually said is just obviously true. Some cultures are better than other cultures. Cultures that value free speech are better than cultures that value censorship. Cultures that treat women as equal human beings with freedom and autonomy are better than cultures where women are second-class citizens or are essentially enslaved to men in their lives. Cultures that allow gay people the freedom to live our lives in peace are better than cultures that normalize and support harm towards gay people or even the death penalty for gay people. On and on we can go on. But in fact, the Taliban's culture in Afghanistan is worse than the culture we have here in America. And it's not racist to say so. It's in fact insane to suggest otherwise. Now, of course, culture is something different than race. A person from Afghanistan can come to America, embrace our culture and our values, and be a wonderful part of our society. It's not about their race or their ethnicity. It's about those cultural values there versus here and making sure that we maintain ours. And I'm a big supporter of legal immigration. It's a boon to our economy. It makes us the melting pot that makes America so special. And we have so many different cultures mixed together, the positive aspects of those cultures. But it is really important and key to ensure that they assimilate and integrate to American values, that we aren't importing huge amounts of people that are then going to come here and raise kids who will become voters who won't believe in basic American concepts. But many immigrants do come here and do embrace American values, and I'm sure the same is true in Britain. But that's what we need to just ensure is happening, that we're assimilating, that we're selecting people who want to come here and work hard and make this country better, not people who want to come and bring outdated or even in some cases, frankly, evil cultural views and values with them and then try to institute those here. We don't want that. And that's got nothing to do with race and everything to do with ideas. Now, of course, it can get fraught, and some people do kind of use culture as a mask for when they really mean to talk about race, but that's certainly not what the MP here was doing, and it's not what I think most people with cultural concerns about immigration are doing either. Whether it's in America or overseas, people in media have to stop doing this thing where they just scream racism anytime somebody brings up a remotely controversial idea. But even most people, shows you what an echo chamber media can be. These people must be purely ensconced in a ultra-liberal bubble because that's not actually a controversial idea. Out on the street in Britain or in the US, any normal person would not find that particularly shocking. This idea that cultural relativism is not valid. Most people would agree with that, actually. So the reporters are the ones that are out of touch here. But media's got to stop throwing around the racism slur like candy on Halloween, because whether they realize it or not, over time, the over-invocation of this word and of this tagline has really stripped it of its power. And unfortunately, people who are truly racist benefit the most from that, because now when you see somebody labeled racist, you can't really believe that it's necessarily true. So that allows actual bad actors to get away with it because of this really unfortunate boy or girl or they, them who cried wolf phenomenon. And I will just say how terribly it seems to me that here in the US, but apparently in the UK as well, how terribly conservative minorities are treated. I mean, the audacity to accuse a black woman of being racist and hating herself and hating other brown people just because she has a different view on immigration and culture than you do is really quite something. I'm not one of those people who says that a minority can never be racist. And there are some cases of token minorities who do really go far into playing into stereotypes about their own groups of people and kind of throwing them under the bus. But that's not all or even most minorities who just think differently. And that's certainly not this MP. She made an entirely legitimate argument that if people want to disagree with it, go ahead by all means, but don't smear this poor woman as a racist and a race traitor rather than actually argue with her. That's just disgusting and bad faith and so emblematic of everything that's wrong with political discourse in the West today. But what do you guys think? Do you side with these woke reporters, or like me, are you in agreement with this MP? Let me know in the comments below. And now we've got to talk about the latest free speech controversy on campus, because we just had the first tenured professor fired for pro-Palestine speech. At least that's what's happening according to the nonpartisan Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, FIRE, which, disclaimer, I do some consulting work with, but they are the gold standard, the nonpartisan, non-ideological champions of free speech and academic freedom that we need and have in America today. And they're out with a warning that a university has just fired a tenured professor because of her outspoken, controversial pro-Palestine views. FIRE reports that for the first time since the October 7 terror attacks in Israel and subsequent war in Gaza, a tenured faculty member in the United States has been fired for pro-Palestinian advocacy. The firing of tenured anthropology professor Maura Finkelstein by Muhlenberg College, a private Lutheran school in Allentown, Pennsylvania, marks the third serious attack on tenured faculty this week. Now, it is worth noting that we're talking about a private college here, so it's not technically a First Amendment issue, but it still does go towards these general cultural values of freedom of expression and open debate and academic freedom that I've spoken up about at the past, even at private universities, and that are important just as a society to value, regardless of the technical application or not of the First Amendment. So it's still at stake here, but just this isn't necessarily a constitutional question because it is not a public university. But we should still support open discourse and debate, and it sounds from this reporting like that's being trampled all over here. FIRE further reports that Finkelstein reportedly lost her job after an administrative investigation into her social media posts about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. According to Inside Higher Ed, Finkelstein reposted an Instagram story from a Palestinian-American poet that stated, in part, "Do not cower to Zionists. Shame them. Do not welcome them in your spaces. Do not make them feel comfortable. Why should those genocide-loving fascists be treated any different than any other flat-out racist? Don't normalize Zionism. Don't normalize Zionists taking up space." And this wasn't the only time the professor made very controversial and inflammatory remarks about the conflict. November reporting by the college's student newspaper, the Muhlenberg Weekly, suggests Finkelstein has been a lightning rod for her pro-Palestinian advocacy since October 7. Finkelstein sent a message to all faculty members stating the events of October 7 could not be mourned without acknowledging that, quote, Israel is a settler colonial state, Palestinians have been living under occupation since 1948, and Gaza is an open-air prison. She added that for Palestinians in Gaza, Israel's acts of revenge will likely result in absolute annihilation. Finkelstein also posted an image of students who were fundraising for the war effort in Gaza and accused them of fundraising for genocide. Now, I completely understand that many of these ideas and statements are incredibly controversial and deeply offensive to many people. But that's kind of the test of freedom of expression, whether you defend other people's right to express ideas and sentiments, even ones that deeply, deeply offend you. But some people have clearly not taken that approach and have instead sought to get Professor Finkelstein censored. They started an online petition demanding that she be punished for her online advocacy. The petition described her speech as, quote, glorifying Hamas and vilifying Israel, and alleged that Finkelstein was exhibiting classroom bias and targeted aggression toward Jewish students. Even if the first part of that claim is true, those are just extremely controversial opinions. And the second part of the claim, no real evidence has been provided of that. Comments made out of the classroom and away from the workplace about politics are not anywhere near enough to prove that somebody is actually treating a certain type of student unfairly in their classroom, which would be another matter entirely and not really a free speech question at that point. However, the cancel mob seems to have gotten their way on this one because the university has fired the professor for her controversial pro-Palestinian advocacy. And I'm not here to tell you what to think about the Israeli-Palestine conflict. I very much acknowledge the limits of my own knowledge on that issue and don't pretend to have it all figured out. But I am here to tell you that no matter what side of the conflict you fall on, you should not be cheering on this act of censorship. It is essential to open discourse and debate and knowledge and learning and evolution towards truth that, especially at universities, which are supposed to be beacons of open discourse, people will be allowed to express even very controversial or offensive ideas. Because if people have to be afraid that if what they say might upset someone, they might get fired, then they're obviously going to self-censor and hold back and not engage in the kind of exploration of ideas and sentiments that we actually need to truly have learning take place and to truly get closer to the truth over time. And if an online mob can start a petition and get a professor fired for expressing views you strongly disagree with, well, that could happen to professors that you agree with as well. So even if you're super pro-Israel, even if you consider yourself a proud Zionist, you shouldn't want this kind of thing to be allowed to happen, because tenured pro-Israel professors all across this country rely on their tenured status to protect them from pro-Palestinian students who would start petitions and campaigns to get them fired and have very much tried to do so. I've covered it on this very podcast. So the undermining of tenure protections for academic freedom isn't something anyone on either side should support, because in doing so, to own the other side or to see somebody who really offends you taken down, you are, knowingly or unknowingly, eroding the rights that protect your own side's ability to express the ideas you do agree with. Again, no matter how you feel about this conflict or the issue more broadly, you should not be happy to see people being shut down and having their academic freedom violated because of their ideas. The only way out of the dark discourse over these issues is through more debate and more conversations, not censorship and cancellation mobs. But what do you guys think? I want to hear from you. Even if you disagree with me, do let me know in the comments below, and do hit that like button while you're at it. And now it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
Today, this patronizing TikToker has a message for men, and it will make your skin crawl. This TikToker in question instructs his female followers to pass the phone to their boyfriends or husbands so he can deliver them this heartwarming and not at all condescending message. Let's take a look.
Hi, so this is your husband, boyfriend, partner, etc. You know the drill. Up. Oh my god. Hi. You are so masculine and you're so strong. You want to know what would take it to the next level? Is when someone's not done talking, you wait for them to stop talking before you say words. It's so masculine to wait and to listen. Yeah, and to listen. And sometimes you don't have to say things. Okay, go.
So, there's a lot to unpack there, but that just made my skin crawl. The whole thing is just painfully cringeworthy, and it's so condescending as a man. Like, why are you speaking to adult men as if they're toddlers? And why do you possibly think that's going to compel them or speak to them rather than repulse them, offend them, and push them in the opposite direction? I mean, I can't imagine a better way to make people not take your advice. And that's what bothers me about this video is I actually agree with the point that not all, but a lot of men do interrupt women very often and do have a habit of speaking over women in workplace conversations and other things. I've observed it myself where my coworker or colleague will say something and then everyone will not notice it. And then I'll say the same thing 5 minutes later and they'll be like, oh, good idea. This is a thing. Sexism and these kinds of habits are real, but this seems like the worst possible way to try to address them because it just makes men feel defensive and condescended to, and it's insulting and reductive and just seems to have the absolute opposite of the intended effect. Speaking down to straight men and villainizing them and honestly like treating them like they're idiots and acting like everything about them is wrong and problematic, rightly or wrongly, and I don't support this, but that's why we have Andrew Tate. That's why we have the red pill movement, the extremes of which are openly sexist and very hateful towards women. Well, that didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't pop into existence out of a vacuum. It happened because a lot of men out there feel condescended to and feel judged and feel attacked and feel like there's not a way that they're allowed to be masculine and not be judged for it or not be viewed as problematic or whatever. And stuff like this does not help. Maybe it's meant somewhat as a joke, but it's really not funny and it really does rub men the wrong way. And then 5 minutes later, people like this will be like, oh my God, why are all these men going red pill and becoming so toxic? It's like, well, you kind of push them into the hands and the arms of those toxic people in a way over the years with this really just annoying and maddening and insulting content. I'm not saying that excuses it. I still think people should be smart enough to reject toxic ideologies like that peddled by the Andrew Tates of the world, but it does explain it to some extent. And it seems to me that you should be wiser than to engage in this kind of thing if what you actually want to see is harmony between the sexes, for sure. But I don't think that's what people like this actually want to do. They know that the people who are liking and clicking on this and sharing it is all just women, and the men who see it will just be annoyed by it for the most part or offended by it. And they don't care though, because they'll get views, they'll get some money from it, they'll build a brand off it. And if it actually in some small way just makes gender relations worse and antagonizes men, okay, well, I'm doing fan service for a female audience and I'm profiting from it. So hope that's worth it for you, babe. I hope that is. And this isn't some aberration. It's unfortunately typical of this person's content. This TikToker makes videos like this all the time. It's like a little content niche or trend, and I just find it incredibly, incredibly obnoxious and destructive. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe you found this video lovely and delightful. Do feel free to let me know. And now I'll wrap up today's show by reading a few of your comments from yesterday's episode. One person says, how are you going to stop oil? You can't even cook without it. Yeah, people don't realize just how integral oil and gas and other fossil fuels are to almost everything about modern human civilization. They really don't. Another person says, Gene Simmons, I'm sorry, I mean Fran. That's the Bill Maher guest from yesterday, is the type of person who gets more hype and more radical when an audience decides to clap after every freaking sentence. Love your show, Brad, but as a straight white guy who enjoys watching you lose brain cells over woke TikToks, does that mean I have a new type of fetish and I now am joining you under the umbrella for the type of principles they put out there? It probably counts based on their logic. Yeah, new sexuality. Cringeosexual. You enjoy watching people suffer under cringe. Honestly, that would be less ridiculous than some of the letters they've tried to add to the alphabet mafia, honestly. Another person said, I saw your viewer's question on Roe v. Wade, and I thought your answer made perfect sense. What is your interpretation regarding Obergefell versus Hodges? Many people are afraid that same-sex marriage is next to be overturned, but I personally don't think so based on the arguments used. What do you think? Well, so the Obergefell case happened in 2015 when I was still in high school. So only years later did I kind of analyze it to figure out how I feel about it. And I would say I have something of mixed thoughts about it when it comes to the law. I can see both the equal protection argument that was advanced by Anthony Kennedy, and I can also see, though, the argument that judges are not supposed to set nationwide policy, and that it was moving along through the democratic process at the state level that John Roberts made. So I would say I'm not sure I have a strong opinion on the case itself originally. I don't know where my heart truly lies on that one. What I will say is that I think it's very unlikely that it will be overturned, and that's a longer conversation as to why I feel that way. But in short, don't buy the hype. I could be wrong. I didn't think Roe v. Wade would be overturned, and I've been proven obviously incorrect about that, so I could be wrong, which is why I supported legislation called the Respect for Marriage Act. This was a bipartisan bill that passed with support from mostly Democrats, but also a hefty chunk of Republicans, that actually codified gay marriage into federal law. And it was signed by President Biden, I believe, in 2022, though maybe it was 2023. And so now, even if Obergefell was overturned, gay marriage would remain in place nationwide because of the Respect for Marriage Act. So we actually don't need to worry about that, because I think it's unlikely that it was overturned. But because of this legislation, even if it was overturned, nothing would really change. Gay marriage would still be the law of the land. So rest assured, you guys don't need to worry about that one. Although I'm sure there'll be a lot of media fear porn and fear mongering from politicians about it. It's actually just perfectly all right and fine, and nothing bad is going to happen. Another person said, thanks. Neil Gorsuch is one of the two SCOTUS members I truly respect. O'Connor is the only other one who was beholden to neither wing, in my honest opinion. By the way, what are your MBTI letters? I don't know what that is. That might be the personality type thing, and I guess I would say I don't know, and I'm not sure I really believe in that kind of thing, to be honest. Another person says, my brother and I were raised by a wonderful mom and dad who adopted us. There was a lot of love in our entire extended family. My brother has 2 grandchildren, and I'm a 70-year-old married gay man, 45 years together. Oh, good for you. Thank you for defending same-sex parents. It takes a lot of commitment to raise children when you cannot have them through natural means. Think of the children who still had wonderful families, who had a parent die at a young age and were raised by one parent. Yeah, it's because of all these kinds of stories that I really disagreed with Michael Knowles and what he had to say. And I just wish people weren't so judgmental when it comes to families and other parents. You see this with a lot of the Republican talk about childless cat ladies and that kind of thing. Real life is complicated and it's nuanced, and these black and white judgments, I don't think, often age very well. Another person says, I have seen the studies suggesting that the children of same-sex couples outperform the national averages of achievement. I think this is actually easy to explain. Same-sex couples, by nature, have to engage in very proactive steps in order to become parents. It never just happens to them. As a result, the cohort is made up of entirely of people who planned to become parents, who were well prepared financially and emotionally to become parents. I don't think homosexual people are inherently better people, but people who are able to have children deliberately after securing their financial base are in a much better position to succeed. Yeah, exactly. When I point out that some studies actually find above average outcomes for kids raised by same-sex couples, I'm certainly not suggesting that they are inherently somehow superior to heterosexual parents. No, it's that only a small percentage of gay people choose to go through the process of having children, and it's people who tend to be financially quite well off, so they can provide the kid with a lot of resources, and who have very deliberately decided to and want a child and have a core strong sense of family values often. So it makes sense that subgroup, which isn't really representative of all gay people, it's a self-selected, not representative sample, would make for really good parents on average. That makes sense. I mean, and so it's just apples and oranges to kind of compare them in that way. So yeah, I'm not saying they're better than straight people. Absolutely not. Another person says, sorry, but that wasn't a crack pipe. That was a full-blown mushrooms trip. And this is about Fran Lebowitz on Bill Maher. She thought she was in her living room talking trash, not realizing it was Bill Maher's show. Yes, but apparently the audience liked it. They were clapping like seals. And that's what really, really disturbed me. Another person about the Just Stop Oil protesters says, I hope they're enjoying the vegan food in jail, fetching clothing, and the friendly company. Yeah, guys, I might actually be interviewing a Just Stop Oil activist soon on the show, and that will be spicy. That will be a controversial confrontation. Another person wrote, bro is not Gandhi. I cannot believe this woman, this Just Stop Oil activist, compared herself to Gandhi. Like, babe, The Delulu is strong in this one. Another person says convicted of slow walking sounds authoritarian, referencing one of the charges that the Just Stop Oil activists were convicted under. Yes, I know what you mean, but actually what that refers to in British speak or whatever is blocking traffic. They were blocking roadways. That's what they were arrested for. So it's actually, to me, perfectly legitimate to arrest someone for that. You don't have the right to stop other people from getting to work or getting to the hospital. No, no, no. All right, everybody. That is it for this episode of the Brad versus Everyone podcast. Thank you so much for joining me and tuning in. Please do make sure to subscribe if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button and do comment with your thoughts. I want to hear from you guys. I do read the comments and I always pick a few to respond to in every episode. So leave your comment. And if you leave it with a super chat or a super thanks, I'll definitely read it on the next show. So do leave your thoughts below. And with that, we'll talk again tomorrow.